Okay, my friends, we're going to learn a little bit more about telling time today. And I want you to look at my little makeshift clock over here. And for today, I want you to think of my whole clock as cut into 4 parts. So see how I can take these apart? 1, 2, 3, 4 parts of one whole clock. Okay, so I'm going to put my parts back together because I want to show you something about my clock and about analog clocks. Remember, analog clocks are the ones with the 2 hands, the hour hand and the minute hand. Each part of my clock, or each fourth, we also call quarters. So remember when we did money and we talked about there being $1 and $1 has 4 quarters? Think of the clock as the same thing. The clock is one whole clock, just like $1, but it has 4 quarters in it. Each one of these quarters represents 15 minutes. So remember, as the minute hand goes around the clock, we skip count by 5. So 1 quarter represents 15 minutes. And what that means is between here and here is 15 minutes. 5, 10, 15. If I were to go another quarter or another 15, I would start at my 15 and go 20, 25, 30, right? And then it would be half past. 2 quarters equal half past. So from here to here is another 15 minutes. 5, 10, 15. If I take another quarter of my clock, I count another 15. 5, 10, 15. And now you can see 45, right? Or we also say it would be a quarter till the next hour. And just so you can see, if I were to skip count starting here, I'm going to end up at 45. There's 45 minutes. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. Now if I take another quarter, I've taken 4 quarters, I would make my way around to the whole. It would be another 15 minutes, right? 5, 10, 15. Okay, let's look at our clock. We're going to start at 3 o'clock. And one way to remember that this is o'clock, just think when the big hand is at the top, we know it's 3 o'clock. So if I go all the way around, my big hand is back at the top. When the big hand is at the top, we know it's 4 o'clock. Today's lesson, remember, we're talking about quarters. So if I were to show you, I don't know if you could see, if I were to put my quarters on my clock, I could break this analog clock into quarters as well. Okay. And remember I said each quarter is 15 minutes. So if I were to move, if I take this out, and I were to move, might move everything else over a little bit. 15 minutes, right? One of my quarters, just one. We say, you can say this a couple different ways. We can say that it is 4:15. We can also say that it is a quarter past, we look at our hour, 4, whoops, we don't need to put those in there. 4, clock. Okay, now if we're to move another quarter, 15 more minutes, 5, 10, 15. The new time is, put a little, 4:30. We could also say that that is half past 4 o'clock. You see that our hand is half past the 4, and we're now straight down, 4:30. Now if I move another 15 minutes or another quarter, I'm going to remove another quarter, put that over there, 5, 10, 15. Now our little clock tells us it still hasn't quite reached the 5, so we're still in the 4 o'clock hour, because remember, the minute hand has not gone all the way around. We have not gone 1 full hour. We've now gone 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45 minutes. So now our time is 4:45. Another way to say this is, get ready for this, 1/4 till 5. Because how many more minutes do we have until the new hour? 5, 10, 15. 1/4 of the clock. So if I go another 15 minutes, 5, 10, 15, my minute hand is at the top, so I know it's 5 o'clock. Okay, we are on Chapter 10, Lesson 4, and we're going to start today on page 614. Looks just like this, so make sure you get that out so we can do this together. At the top of the page, it says, you can show time to the quarter hour. There are 15 minutes in a quarter hour. It's what we just talked about with the quarters in the clock. There are 4 quarter hours in 1 hour. So before we write anything down, I want you to look at the whole clock, right? And then they've shaded in, let's see if I can do that. They've shaded in a quarter here, and then they shaded in 2 quarters here, right? And 3 quarters here. And the whole clock, if they went 1 more quarter, would be 4 quarters, right? Okay, so now let's look at the clock. 1 o'clock. My big hand is pointing towards the top, so we know it's 1 o'clock. Now in this next one, we see 1:15. 1 is the hour. So see, they've written here 1, that's the hour, 1 o'clock. And then they've gone 1/4 past 1 o'clock, which is 15 minutes, 1/4 of the clock. And we write that as 1:15. Because remember, each one here is 5. We count the clock in 5-minute increments. We skip count by 5 all the way around. So then let's look at this clock. And we have 1:30. So the hour is still 1 o'clock. See my hour hand right there? It hasn't reached the 2, but now I'm 1:30 o'clock. I've gone 30 minutes. 15, and then 15 more, which would give me, let's see, 30. I'm going to write a 30. Whoops, I don't want that color. Let's try that again. $30 there. I'm going to write a 15 here. Okay. Now let's look at the next clock. This one right here. And now it's 1/4 till 2. So we're still, my hour hand is still in the 1 o'clock hour. I'm not at 2 o'clock yet. I haven't made my way around the whole clock, which is 1 hour. So we say, instead of saying we have 15 more minutes until 2 o'clock, we just simply say it's 1/4 till 2. Okay, now let's look at number 1. And our instructions say, use the clock and tell us what time is shown. Write the time. So let's look at our clock. Let's look at our hour hand first. Whoops. So there's our hour hand right there. And the hour is 11 o'clock. So I'm going to write 11. Now let's look at our minute hand, which is this one right here. If we were to count, if you don't remember, how many minutes is in that quarter? So far we've gone 1/4. I'm going to shade. Okay, we've gone 1/4, which means the time is now 11:15. Remember, this would be 5 and then 10 and then 15 minutes. Okay, let's look at number 2. Let's look at our clock. Let's look at our hour hand first. So that one first. And our hour, it's not quite to the 9 o'clock, right? It's not quite there. It's still in between the 8 and the 9. So we know that the hour is still 8 o'clock. Okay, and now I'm going to go in and I'm going to shade the quarters, right? So if I was to look at this in quarters, this would be 1/4, and this would be 2/4, or half past the hour. And if I were to count, if I were to skip count all the way around, I would go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. So when my minute hand is going straight down, I know that it's 8:30. Let's look at our third clock. All right, let's look at our hour hand first. That's this one right here. So if we look really close, we can see that the hour hand is not quite on the 7. That means it's not quite 7 o'clock. It's still 6 o'clock. So you have to pay close attention to where that hour hand is pointing. In this case, it is still 6 o'clock, or 6 o'clock in the 6 o'clock hour. However, if we were to skip count all the way to our minute hand, which is this one here, we would count 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. So we say it's 6:45, or 1/4 to 7, because the next hour is the 7 o'clock hour. Okay, at the bottom, talk math. So if it's asking at 4:15, where is the minute hand? The minute hand would be, let's see if I can't draw our clock, right? Up at the top, we have the 12, straight down, we have 6. And then we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The 9 is right there. So we have 7 and 8 here, and then 10 and 11 right there. So if I were to say at 4:15, where would my minute hand be? Well, my hour hand would be on the 4, okay? My minute hand would then be 5, 10, 15. It would be pointing at the 3. This is what 4:15 would look like. There's my hour hand in red and my minute hand in blue. Okay, turn the page with me to page 615. Okay, here is page 615. There we go. And usually I'd have you do this on your own, but again, we're not together and I can't be there to help you through each one. So I want you to do this with me. Okay, let's start at the top, number 4. Let's look at our clock. What are they asking? It says to use the clock to tell what time is shown, write the time. So the first thing we want to do is look at our hour hand. Where is our hour hand pointing? Let's see, if I were to draw a line straight out, it's not quite on the 4, but it's definitely not on the 5. So we know that the 4 o'clock is the hour. We're still in the 4 o'clock hour. Now if we look at our minute hand, which is the hand in blue, if we were to count and we were to skip count by 5s, 5, 10, 15. So the time is 4:15, or a quarter past 4 o'clock. Let's look at number 5. Again, let's look at our hour hand first. Now, if I were to draw, again, a line from the hour hand out, it is not quite on the 8, right? Can you see that? So that means it's not 8 o'clock yet. That hour hand has not touched that 8. So the hour is still 7 o'clock. So write a 7 right in there. Now if we look at our our minute hand, which is the one in blue, and we count it all the way across, let's see, if I put a 0 up there, a quarter past is 15 minutes, right? Half past, whoops, that's not a very good 3, is 30. Another quarter is 45. So these are the increments that we need to remember. Instead of each time we'd have to go, okay, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. We can look and see that the minute hand is on the 9, and we'll start to remember that that means 45. So it's 7:45. And if you can't remember off the bat, that's okay. You can always go back and skip count by 5s. But what I want you to start remembering is that a quarter, 15 minutes. When the minute hand is straight down on the 6, it means 30. And when the minute hand is on the 9, it means 45. When the minute hand is at the top, it means it's o'clock. Okay, let's look at number 6. Look at our hour hand first. Our hour hand is just past the 2, so we know that the hour is 2. Now we look at our minute hand, which is this long one, right? The longer one is the minute hand. It's pointing straight at the 3. If I were to skip count, 5, 10, 15, it's 2:15. Okay. On number 7, it's now asking us to draw the hands on each clock and write the time. So, on number 7, it says it's a quarter till 2 o'clock. So till means not there yet. It's a shortened way to say until. So if I were to say, we are not gonna go to the park until your dad gets home. That's the same thing as saying till your dad gets home. So when we're saying it's a quarter till 2, it's not 2 o'clock yet. So if we're gonna write our hour hand, we're not going to let it be on the 2. Instead, it's going to be close to the 2, but not quite. Okay? Now a quarter till means there's a quarter until it's that time. So remember, if we did our quarters, a quarter till, that would mean it's 15 minutes until 2 o'clock, right? That means I would have to write my minute hand pointing at the 9. Because in 15 minutes, it will be 2 o'clock, until 2 o'clock. So if I'm writing it down here on my digital clock, the hour would be 1. It's not 2 o'clock yet. And the minutes would be 45. Okay? Let's look at number 8. Number 8 says a quarter past 5 o'clock. And this one, they've given us the minute hand. But we know it's a quarter past 5 o'clock. Does that mean it's 6 o'clock? Nope. So if I'm drawing my hour hand, it's still in the 5 o'clock hour, but it's not quite on the 5. It's just past it. So it would look more like that. Okay, and if I'm writing it, the hour is 5 o'clock, and the minutes are 5, 10, 15. Okay, let's look at number 9. A quarter past 12. So this one looks just like number 8 did. So on number 8, where was my minute hand? It was on the 3. So in this one, it's going to look just like that. My minute hand is going to be on the 3. It's the longer one is the minute hand, remember? And then my hour hand, past 12 o'clock, doesn't mean that it's 1 o'clock yet. It's still the 12 o'clock hour. So my hour hand would be just past the 12. That was a crooked hand, but you get the idea. Okay, so then my hour, if I'm writing it, looks like this. 12, same thing, 5, 10, 15 minutes. So 12, 15. Okay, let's look at number 10. It wants us to read the time and then write the time on the digital clock. Here's our digital clock. Remember, the analog is the one with the hour hand and the minute hand that goes around. A digital clock just tells us what time it is. So if we're writing 12:45 on a digital clock, our hour is 12. So we're going to write a 12. And then our minutes are 45. So right over here, we're going to write 45. And I can't quite get it in there, but you're going to write 45. Okay, let's look at number 11. It wants us to write, how will we write 4:15? So the hour is 4. So what we write over here in our hour is the number 4. "15" is our minutes. So right over here in the minutes portion, we're going to write a 15. Okay, let's look at number 12. 9:30. How would we write 9:30? Well, our hour is 9. So we're going to write a 9 right there in our hour section. And the minutes are 30. So we would write 30. 9:30. Okay, so now turn with me to page 616. We're going to do number 13. And for number 13, I'm going to use this clock. I feel like it'll be easier for you to see. So let's read number 13. Mia is at school. School is over at 3:15. She has 3 more hours to wait. What time is it now? So we know that school is over at 3:15. She has 3 more hours to wait. What time is it now? So I'm going to go back. I'm going to start at, go around to 3:15, which looks like that. So if Mia has 3 hours to wait till 3:15, wait means we have to go back. So I'm going to go counterclockwise, and I'm going to go back 1 full turn, which will be 1 hour. Now it's 2:15. That was 1 hour. We need to go back 3 hours. So I'm going to go back 1 full turn counterclockwise. Now I've gone back 2 hours. Whoops, went too far. Now it's 1:15. So remember, she had 3 hours to wait. So we have to go back 1 more hour. So I'm going to go counterclockwise, 1 full hour again. Now it's been 3. I turned it back 3 hours. So what time is it now? If you wrote 12:15, you were right. My hour hand is on the 12, or almost on the 12. My minute hand is on the 3, which tells me it's 12:15. Okay, let's look at number 14. Ken goes to his friend's house at 2:15. Circle the clock that shows this time. Okay, so we know that our minutes are 15. So where's our minute hand going to be pointing? It's going to be pointing to that first quarter to the 3. So what you want to circle, and then let's check the hour just to make sure. Where's my hour hand pointing? At the 2. So you can go ahead and circle this clock. That's the clock that says 2:15. Okay, number 15. Aaliyah's family went hiking. They left at 9:45. They drove for 3 hours. Then they stopped for lunch. Lunch took 1 hour. What time did they finish lunch? Okay, for question 15, I brought back my little clock. And let's do this one together. I wanted you to see what happens as the clock turns forward and as it turns back. This time we're going to go clockwise. So we are going to go in the direction that the clock always moves, which is forward or clockwise. In number 13, we went counterclockwise. We went backwards. So let's look at number 15. Aaliyah's family went hiking. They left at 9:45. So my clock right now is set at 9:45. It's not quite 10 o'clock because even though it's really close, it's not quite hit the 10. So it's still the 9 o'clock hour with 45 minutes. So they left at 9:45. They drove for 3 hours. So let's pretend that we're driving. We're going to go for 3 hours. 1 full hour turn around the clock. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60. We know that there are 60 minutes in 1 hour. So now I've gone 1 full turn around and it's 1 hour. But it says that they drove for 3 hours. So we have 2 more to go. So I'm going to turn 1 more hour. And then the last hour that they drove. Okay. So they drove for 3 hours, which would make it now 12:45. But then they stopped for lunch. Lunch took 1 hour. So we have to go 1 more time, 1 more hour. What time did they finish lunch? Let's look at our hour hand, which is this one. It's not quite on the 2, so it's not the 2 o'clock hour, it's the 1 o'clock hour. So we would write that like that. And the minutes are 45. So they finished lunch at 1:45. Okay, for our hot problem, I just want you to go and ask or tell anybody in your house or grandma or grandpa, whenever you see them, why is each 15-minute period on a clock called 1/4 hour? Okay, so if you remember from the first part of our lesson, We talked about the clock and how it was broken up into 4 quarters. Okay, so go tell somebody why each 15-minute period on a clock is called 1 quarter. Thank you guys for listening to the lesson today. I know it was kind of hard, but I feel like this is one of those lessons that I really, really want you guys to understand. It's just you need to know how to read a clock. So I took a little bit longer on it, and I hope that you guys can look at a clock and start to tell what time it is by looking at an analog clock. Okay, and I'll see you guys on the next lesson. Go ahead and do your homework, page 617 and 618, and I'll see you on the next lesson.